Welcome to an introduction to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, part 4, supporting abstract thinking and executive functioning. My name is Eric Marier, and I am a transitional services facilitator at Surrey Place in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. On our agenda for this video module, we'll cover how fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, what we call FASD, may affect abstract thinking, how FASD may affect executive functioning, and how we can help in both these areas. As a result of this session, participants will be informed of how abstract thinking and executive functioning may be affected by FASD, active in identifying a child or a youth's strengths in these two areas, and engage with a child or youth with collaborative strategies to support abstract thinking and executive functioning. The first performance area we'll talk about today is abstract thinking, and that's thinking about things that aren't physically right in front of you. Someone with FASD may have difficulty managing money. Money's always been a very abstract concept, but even more so now that we're paying for things by tapping with a card, or we're paying for things online, and less there's that physical exchange of money. As well, money is likely something that someone with FASD will require lifelong support with. Managing time can also be problematic for someone with FASD. Planning for the future. The future is not something that's right in front of us, it's ahead of us. Complex symbolic language like metaphors or understanding sarcasm. Concepts and systems like token systems and a behavior plan. The justice system, which is based on consequences, based on cause and effect. Intuitively, those individuals who don't have FASD, we might understand cause and effect much better than someone with FASD. That relationship between cause and effect may not be as intuitive for someone with FASD. And so the justice system, which is based on cause and effect, which is based on consequences, may not be as effective for someone with a diagnosis. So let's take some time again, like in previous video modules, to update our strengths inventory for our child or youth. So take some time right now to record in that list one or more strengths that your child may have that involves abstract thinking. They may have a skill or an interest that involves abstract thinking. You can also complete this exercise after our video. Okay, so how can we help? Well, things like money, when we're teaching them, we can teach those things using real objects, right? Using real money to teach the concept of money. Maybe giving the child an allowance, or a youth an allowance, a weekly allowance, where we're giving them physical money and they're saving in a piggy bank, right? They might have a piggy bank for savings and a piggy bank for things they can buy right now. And physically, they should be, along with your help, with your support, they should be able to know, do I have enough money to buy this thing that I want, or don't I have enough money, right? Avoid complex language, avoid sarcasm, avoid metaphors. Say what you mean, and don't assume that they'll understand hints or eye rolls or sarcasm. And say exactly what you want, especially when you're delivering an instruction. Be very direct, be very clear and supportive with what you're asking. Don't assume they'll know what's expected of them because of what happened in the past, or what's customary, or because they've seen you do it. If you'd like for them to perform something, you need to explicitly tell them to do so. This is a quote I really like, again, from the Asante Center out in British Columbia. Show me that asking for help is okay, right? We need to model that to our children, to our youth, by asking for help for ourselves when we need it. To let them know that asking for help is always an option. And modeling this is showing them that it's a strength that people have. It's a strength that people have to get things done for themselves or for others. And it helps build that self-advocacy skill that we want our youth, our children to have when they're independent of us, right? If we're not around to help them, we need to let them know that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for someone to clarify themselves. It's okay to ask for someone to repeat themselves because we didn't really catch what they said the first time. Think of the most confident people at meetings that you yourself attend. Those are likely the people who ask for clarification, who ask for someone to repeat themselves, who let everyone know that they didn't understand the first time, they'd like to hear it again, right? We want our children and youth to have that kind of confidence because they'll need that kind of confidence to advocate for themselves when we're not around. We don't want them to go through life thinking it's okay for other people with other conditions, with other challenges to advocate for themselves, but it's not okay for me. We don't want them to think that. We want them to think that it's okay for me as well, that everyone needs other people in order to navigate life, right? We all need one another, and asking for help is one way that we can navigate our lives a lot more successfully. Our next performance area that we'll talk about is executive functioning. And executive functioning is managing yourself and or your resources to achieve a goal. It often involves abstract thinking, right? It often involves planning. So, executive functioning skills seem to be a common challenge in our children and youth with FASD. And we start to notice executive functioning deficits as the child gets older, usually around middle school when they have to manage more of their day on their own. So some with FASD may have difficulty with things like being on time. Time is a very abstract concept. Knowing how long something will take, right? You might say, be ready at 9:30 to meet me in the car and we'll go to the store together. But at 9:30 for them might mean, oh, that's when I jump in the shower, then brush my hair, then put on my coat, my boots, and then I walk out the door, right? So they may not have known, they may not have thought in a way or planned in a way that took into account how long that prep was going to take before 9:30. That takes executive functioning skills and abstract thinking. Knowing what to do first and in what order. So you may have a teen who agrees to do a book report without anyone's help at school, and 2 weeks go by and they haven't started yet. Well, they didn't know what the first thing to do was, and then what was the step after that, and what was the step after that one. Usually as we get older, when we have a goal, we're sort of able to plan out what those individual steps will be to get to that goal. That takes tons of executive functioning, and we develop that, over time. As we become adults, we become much better at doing that kind of task. For someone with FASD, that might be a lot more difficult, and they may need our support. And then sometimes, they might agree to a goal like that has a lot of different steps. They might agree to a task, that involves all those, multiple steps. And then once, they're left on their own, they're not able to follow through on what they agreed upon. They need our support. Okay, let's take some time again to update our skills or strengths inventory for our child or youth in the area of executive functioning. Your child or youth may have difficulty in some areas of executive functioning, but in other areas, they might do quite well. They might have a weekend job that they're able to show up to on time every week. Or once they get there, they might know exactly what to do first, and then what's the step after that, and then what's the step after that. That all requires executive functioning. So they may have strengths, they may have skills, they may have interests that involve executive functioning. So we would all put those in our strengths inventory. You can also update that list after this video. So how can we help in terms of executive functioning? Well, as our kids get older, they do get involved in things that have multiple steps, and they do get involved in maybe an outing sometimes that involve different tasks to make that successful. And as they get older, they're more independent of us, so we're not always there to help them. One thing that can help them is a visual schedule that outlines these different steps, that outlines these different considerations in order to make that goal or that task more successful. So creating schedules with them for routines, for outings that they could easily refer back to can be very supportive for them, especially if there's visuals, right? Because, like we talked about in an earlier video module, visual reminders tend to be a lot more successful for us as well. On our phones, on our computers, there's lots of visuals that we rely on to remind us of things, to remind us of our schedule or our calendar. So the same thing goes for our children and youth. Maybe they have a phone that you can create a visual schedule for them, for their day, for their outing, for a routine that they'll have to do on their own. And when we're creating that kind of visual schedule, we want to just put the steps that they need. The less amount of steps there is in that routine, in that outing, in that goal, the more successful they'll be in completing it on their own, right? So less steps, more success. So just put the steps in there that they actually need. And then sometimes you might put steps in there or different components of a day or a schedule that they've never done before or that they haven't mastered yet. Again, that's just going to hurt them. You don't want to assume that they already know something that you're putting onto that visual schedule or that visual reminder. You want to make sure that everything you're putting as a step in that sequence is something that they've already mastered. So it could be that before you move on to building a visual sequence for them or a visual schedule, you might need to go through every skill and make sure that they know that skill independently. And those skills that they don't know independently, you might need to teach them, supported many times before you move forward with that visual plan or that visual schedule. For a younger kid or even an older one as well, this is a visual schedule or visual sequence for toothbrushing, right? And this is something that you can create and then put over the bathroom sink where they brush their teeth. The first picture is the actual routine, and then the next few are the steps to completing that routine. This could be helpful too if they might know how to brush their teeth at home, but when they go out, maybe to grandma and grandpa's, or they're staying at a friend's house, they may not know, as well how to do this on their own without you there. So packing that kind of visual sequence might also be helpful for them. This would be the nighttime routine, maybe for a younger child. This is what it would look like. If you want them to be more independent around getting themselves ready for their nighttime routine. And you can also create them for teens and youth, right? This is where it's going to be very helpful, probably for your family when your child or youth your teen or your youth is doing things on their own. Maybe they're going out on an outing, or they're staying over at someone's house, or they need to know what something will look like tomorrow at school, right? What their day will look like. All these things you can create as a visual daily routine or a visual daily schedule. And you can adjust the visuals depending on your youth's age or development. And of course, adding text to visuals as well. Plan together, right? So if they're going on an outing and you're creating a visual plan for them with all these little steps, you want to include them as much as possible. Go through the steps together, right? And ask them, what are your concerns with these steps? With this step in particular, what kind of help would you need to make that more successful? Because it could be, that in a certain step that they need support, and that support will be available during that time. And this is something you want to work out with them as well ahead of time. And, take the shame out of not knowing something, right? So when we're going through these steps, we don't want to make the child feel quote unquote stupid or not independent or, not able to think for themselves. We're collaborating together, and both of us don't know everything. And so we want to take the shame out of not knowing something. We want to ask a lot of questions. And the more we take the shame out of not knowing something, the more the person is likely to ask for help appropriately. There's a million ways you can ask for help inappropriately. You could throw something across the room. You could slam the door, right? There's all these signs that you can do to show someone that you're overwhelmed, that you need help. What we want to do is we want more and more, we want to teach our child to ask for help appropriately, right? By showing them that asking for help is okay and giving lots of opportunities for them to ask for help, right? Like going through these different steps in a visual sequence or routine. So collaborate as much as possible, partner with your child as they get older too, just to preserve a sense of dignity for them and independence. Make it very overt that you're partnering. You're not prescribing. You're not being the parent telling them what to do, that you're working together to make their outing, to make, their day as successful as possible. And, again, be very generous with reminders, especially closer to an event. Help them predict what may happen and keep checking in, right? Without over checking, right? It's a fine balance because, again, we really want to preserve their dignity as they get older, and we want to give them some sense of accountability. Okay, in our next module, part 5, we will cover resources. So I'm really hoping you'll join me for that. It's a very helpful module. Please stay engaged, register for live events at mysurreyplace.ca, and you can also view recorded events and resources at surreyplace.ca/resources. Get involved. Join our Family Connections group on Facebook by clicking on this link. We would love your feedback. So please take a moment to complete a brief survey to share your feedback with us. You can either scan this QR code, which will lead you to the brief survey, or click on this link below. Thank you. And again, please join me for an introduction to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, part 5, resources. I appreciate your time today.